Hi, everyone, and welcome to Bragging Rights. I'm Lisa Bragg, the host of the show. And, I often have people say to me, I don't have any stories to tell. And the truth is, we're always waiting for those fancy stories to tell. There's lots of stories that we can tell, but they don't always make us look perfect and polished. But it's those stories that make us look human that actually resonate most with people. It's really in the cracks that you'll find the moments that matter. And joining me today is an awesome storyteller who really realized about her moments that mattered. And she's also she's employed in a corporate world, and she's an entrepreneur through her venture that I'll let her tell you about. But I wanted to introduce you to Megan, and I'll bring her up on stage there. Megan Stevens, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I would really love you to tell the story behind what led to your passion project, which is your entrepreneurial part of you. So tell us a little bit about your passion project.
Yeah, so, as you said, I'm in the corporate world, and then I have this other side of me that runs this passion project called Be Grateful. And it really started a number of years ago. I was a runner, and I don't mean like I ran marathons, like I wish I did, but that's not what I meant by that. I was running through life. I was looking for the next thing. I was always chasing like that next promotion, the next job title, the next family vacation, the next long weekend. Where were we going to go next, right? Nothing was ever good enough. You'd get to that moment, and then you'd be looking for the next thing. And I was comparing myself constantly to social media, to other people, to what was happening all around me. And it was really in a moment when my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia that I realized that none of those things mattered. It was a lifetime of memories that were just washed away in a second. And I just stood there and I thought, there has to be more. This can't be it, because I'm burning myself out. I'm burning my family out. And I'm not even present in all these moments that I'm trying to create. I would take us, I decided we were going to go skating, and it was going to be this amazing family moment. And I'd pack everything up, we get there, and it would just be a hot mess. And like 10 minutes later, everything would be piled in the car. But we got that one photo to put on Facebook, and everybody would think that we had this amazing moment, right? But in reality, my own family was like, what was that all about? And so I realized then that I had to stop. I had to stop everything, and I had to figure out what was going on. And when my grandmother passed away with dementia, my mother was really grieving her loss, and she kind of pulled away from our family. And it was this moment in time for me to kind of think about, how do I help? How do I help myself? How do I help my mom? And that year I reached out to all of our family and friends, and I just asked them to share stories. And it was easy as that. I just said, what's your favorite memory? What's your favorite moment of my mom, our family, my grandmother, pretty much anything. And it was incredible what came back. It was these weird little moments, these things you wouldn't even think would be what stuck out to them. And it did. And I collected them, and then I printed them on a set of 52 cards, one for each week of the year for my mom to read, and just kind of process the grief and reconnect with her family and those around her. And that is what started Be Grateful.
That is such a beautiful story, and so many things that we could jump off from that conversation. But I think so many of us can relate to that chase of being perfect and having that visual perfect story to tell, and then realizing in the end it's not the moment that matters. It's all the other stuff that really carries forward. That's so touching to hear that. Is it shocking though to now put some of your real life out there to the world?
It is hard. It's scary when you kind of start sharing who you really are, and you start kind of recognizing those moments, and you start realizing that you don't have to try to keep up with everybody else. And in reality, everybody's doing the same thing. I mean, none of those moments that are out there are perfect. And I think that was a really hard moment for me to stop chasing this dream, this myth that was out there. Stop trying to create a perfect story of who I was and tell the real story of who I was. But the reality was, the minute I started telling more of who I actually was to people, the more people connected to me, the more they were drawn into who I actually was as a person, and the more I connected with my own family.
Yeah, because when we put on this mantle, it's almost like that perfectionistic veneer is too hard for people to relate to you. And that's where when they are real stories, the quirky stories, the fun stories, your family, other people, they all relate to you. And you were telling me a great story too about how you have a brand new job. So congratulations. But when you applied for it, that you really did put your authentic self on the paper. Tell us that story. And everyone, she's such a great storyteller. So tell
Thank
us
you.
that story.
Yeah, I mean, I recently started with a large corporation, Grant Thornton, and I was terrified to apply for the job. I thought there's no way they're going to want someone like me. And I remember sitting there thinking, you know what? From right from the beginning, when I write my cover letter, I'm just going to be me. And I kind of put aside all those, cover letter writing 101 lessons and all the like, here's how you're going to sell yourself. And I was like, I'm going to sell myself by selling who I actually am. Because if they don't want who I am, then I don't think it's the place for me to be. Because ultimately, I'm not going to be happy if I'm trying to be somebody else all the time, trying to package myself into something different. And I remember I sat down that night and I just let the words flow. And it was like this conversation as if I was just sitting across having a coffee with you and just saying, this is why I think I'm going to be great here. And this is what I could bring to the table. And it was so much just me. And I said to my husband that night, they're either going to love it or they're going to be like, next. And surprisingly enough, like really short time, they turned around and they were like, we'd like to have an interview with you. And, the recruiter said to me the cover letter stood out, that it was the thing that she connected with, that it was what she was interested in.
And that's the beauty of it is right away, so many things happened with that where you're trying to get a job, but you really want to make sure that you qualify who you're going to work for. That if they don't resonate with what you stand for, your own values, why do you want to work there? Right. And
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs get that right away. We want to make sure we have qualified clients, but for corporate too, to think about, well, I want to make sure that these are the right people, that they're going to want me because I have to work with them. Otherwise, because we do put on such a fake veneer when
Yeah.
we apply for things.
Yeah. And I think, so with Be Grateful, what I do is I help people create gratitude boxes. So basically what I created for my mom is now what I help people create. And I've learned this through reading all the stories that come in. And I curate these boxes for total strangers, but I feel like I know them by the end. And I realize the ones that I connect with, because there's a multitude of stories that get submitted. There's definitely the people that are like, if it's a birthday one, they'll just write happy birthday, hope you have a great next year. And it's very like it could be a Hallmark card. And I edit that one and I'm like, next. And then there's others that come in and they are just you just lean in. Like you feel like you recognize something about yourself in that moment, right? And you connect. And I learn a little bit about the person by reading this story somebody else has told. And I think I realized after curating so many boxes, that's what life is about. Life is those weird, quirky stories. Life is the small moments. It's not the grand gestures. It's not the picture perfect things. People connect with you through those stories. People see themselves in those moments. And it's no different in the corporate world or the personal world. You have to lean in and connect. I mean, we've all had, teams and leaders where we felt we just connected into like right away and you were a great team. And that's part of storytelling. It's no matter if you're in your, talking to your best friend or you're at work, storytelling allows you to connect with each other. And when you're telling a prepackaged story, nobody connects to it because they can't see themselves at all to it because it's not even what you connect with. But when you tell the real story, like all out, people see themselves in it and they lean in. They want to know more because they recognize pieces of their own family in it.
Because I've told this, before, it's we're humans having human conversations. And that's what you really do curate is that human authentic experience and stop the Hallmark card. Hallmark card, you can get those anywhere, but it's that really what do we bring to the table that makes us different. So would love to hear from the audience now if you have any stories to share with us about what makes you different, the quirky stories that you share, or just even where you're from. Because I know that, Megan, where are you in the world?
I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So, would love to hear from other Canadians. And I know I have people from all over from some time to time watching. So let's hear where you're from and where you're watching today. And maybe if you have a quirky story to share with us. There's always some stories. But again, people always want it to be, they think that they can't share those stories of when they had a hardship or when they ended up with mud on their face, but you can tell those stories. And those are the best stories to relate to other human beings. I think one of the problems is that it's hard to tell a story when it's right happening to you. So I call that a wound. But when it's a scar, that's an easier place to tell the story. So when it's fresh, it's hard to tell those raw stories. But when it's healed and you're stronger for it, those are great stories. What do you think of that?
I totally agree. And, it's funny because I think what makes gratitude boxes successful is as adults, we don't feel comfortable saying to people how we feel or sharing the things that we love about each other or the moments that really matter to us. It's this weird thing where we just don't want to do it. It's awkward. But when people write in their stories to be printed on these cards, it feels easier to do, right? So it's easier to share these moments. And some of them are those scars. Some of them are these incredibly painful moments that they've gone through with other people, and they share them. And they're willing to just share it because they can sit and write it out and they're not face to face with the person. But the connection, you almost feel it radiate off the pages. Like when I've curated celebration of life boxes, it's, every emotion goes through you when you read through those cards because you just feel the stories radiating off of those cards. And it's something about that separation of not having to do it face to face, not having to stand up in a room full of people and say it, that allows people to kind of feel comfortable to share.
And that's a great point. And Melanie, I'm so glad you're joining us from Berkshire of the UK. So she's had a few corporate disasters, less so since she's been working for herself and she can be her true authentic self. And I think that's true is that when you can be your true authentic self, you're just going to get more of the right fit people coming to you and you can do the work that you're meant to do. But I think that one of it, your point to people can write it out and be their authentic self when they're writing. And people get fixated now because we're so much of a video medium that they have to be on video. And you can reach out and be authentic in whichever medium fits you the best. So if short form on a short
Mm-hmm.
card works best for you, or if writing a really long blog post or doing a video or doing audio only, any of those really work well nowadays to just jump in and to connect in the medium that works best for you. What do you work best in? Are you a long form writer or what's your
I'm kind of all over the place on that. It really depends on what I'm feeling. And I think one of the things that I've done a lot of reading on and I really reflect on a lot is this concept of have we lost the art of storytelling with all of this digital age, right? And so, like, you look at digital media and it gave us the audience of millions of people out there. And so you think, great, I can share my story with everyone. But at the end of the day, we've actually become overstimulated and we've almost tuned out because the message that we share sometimes is so filtered because we're looking for that perfect message, right? So if you think about people who will post stuff on social media and you can tell that it's probably the like 100th take of that video, or the blog post has been reworked and reworked and reworked until it's like perfect, or that image has like 5 filters so that it's like looks like it's in some tropical destination that we're like, where are you that you have that, right? And so again, you send it out to masses, but nobody connects with it because it's like, I that's not me. I'm not having that experience. I don't get it, right? And so there's this concept of like sharing for the sake of sharing versus like purposeful storytelling. And so it's funny because everyone's on me about like you need more presence on social media to market your business. But I won't do it unless I actually have a message that I want to share because I wholly believe in like purposeful storytelling. So if I have something that I have a point of view on or I want to share a moment that's actually happened, then I'll go on and I'll usually post like some sort of photo and a short post, or I'll do a blog post, or sometimes if I just really want to share it and I don't have time to write it out, I will do like a video, a quick video. And it's never like perfectly perfected. It's usually with my phone shaking and like, my 9-year-old in the background yelling for something. But I try to purposely be just totally real. This is what it is, because I recognize that we look to social media to feel like we're part of something, but how often have you late at night scrolled Facebook or Instagram and felt even lonelier by the time you're done? Because you can't connect to anything that's there.
And that Melanie agrees. She says it has to be real, definitely, and absolutely agree with that because, and that's where it becomes noise and signal, where a lot of people are just putting out a lot of noise because they were told one day that they had to have five this and five posts and five videos and five
Yes.
things on Instagram, and then they have to be on Clubhouse, and then have to be here and here and here, and they were told some magic prescription or formula, and it just makes it noise instead of just having a few pieces that are solid that you put out there in the world and that you share. And even if you share it on repeat, not everyone is constantly seeing the same story over and over again. So you can say the same message. What is it in workshops? You tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, then you tell them what you told them. And so
Yeah,
repeat is good. Repeat is great.
I know. Well, I mean, and the funny thing is, it took me a while to realize that the stories that I was looking for in my life, like I was waiting for these magical moments to happen that I was going to write about, And, I vividly remember this moment, and it's probably an epic parenting fail on my part. But my son's school had arranged for them to go to a private Cinderella at one of the theaters here. And afterwards, the characters were going to come out and you could shake their hand, take a photo, whatever. And I was thrilled by this. So we went to see it. And afterwards, I wanted to get that picture with him next to the cast and to be able to post that and be like, isn't this amazing? He wanted nothing to do with that. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until finally, and I still have the picture. I didn't delete it for this one reminder. I have a picture of him, and he is so just dejected. He's just like standing next to Cinderella. And I'm like, I looked at it when I got home and I thought, what was I doing? Like, who was I actually having this moment for? Because it wasn't him. I ruined that experience for him because I was so dead set at painting this moment in this picture. And I think when I curate the gratitude boxes, it is a constant reminder because the stories that come through that are the meaningful moments are never those elaborate things. I did it was a high school graduation box, and I still remember it because the dad wrote in one card and it said, I love watching basketball on the couch with you every weekend. And it's such an everyday, simple moment. But when he sat back and thought about it, that was the thing. And I'm like, that's it. It's the small moments, it's the little things in the day.
It's the small things that matter. And that's where I think so many of us are waiting for our signature stories to tell the world instead of realizing it's actually those messy stories are the signature ones and that you have them already, and to stop manufacturing stories that don't exist. And that's where, we have to reflect on our stories and not just think that a magical story is going to happen. Like, connect with what you're thinking and go back in time and pull out stories for your story bank. So that's what I talk about is a story bank. Have those little moments that have mattered or have been really quirky that somebody else can learn from, and have those ready instead of waiting for that perfectly polished story. It's almost like how everyone gets their so many people get their wedding. We have big pictures of our weddings and videos of our weddings. And it's all nice to have that moment in time. But what's going on behind the scenes? Those are usually the stories that make the day and that people really connect with instead of the big, grand, cinematic experience. It's the behind the scenes stories that people really want to hear past the veneer, for sure. Oh, glad you're still joining us, Melanie. She hears us, and yes, less noise, more authentic self. I'll put it up there. So sometimes less is more. Couldn't agree more. And if you're watching, just join in. Let us know what you're thinking about all the stories that Megan's sharing with us about her gratitude boxes and how she came to thinking about the moments that matter and how storytelling really can be about those authentic moments that matter, those little pieces, those snippets. It's the stories and the cracks that matter, and not when we get to say our big speech. It's all the little things that add up to make us different too. And I think that's another thing is we're always looking to have the same story as someone else. Where your Cinderella or your cast story, that would have been the picture that every other parent would have had.
Yeah.
Like everyone wants the same story, but that doesn't help you get a job or, get clients at all. It's the different stories that make a difference.
I mean, we're all unique. And the thing is that we connect with each other through glimpses of the stories, right? So there's little pieces of everybody's story that you recognize pieces of yourself in, and that's how you kind of connect and you can see yourself in those things. And a lot of the times it's these moments that humanize us to each other. And so, starting this new job recently, I had the task of introducing myself to all the management committees for each one of the provinces. And I chose to do it not by talking about my resume of, where I'd been, but I actually introduced them through telling them about my personal history. And I told them all of the funny, random stories of my life, but what I had learned through those moments, the disaster of our wedding and how I learned that, my husband and I could get through anything if we'd gotten through that, or when I worked in a small town in Nova Scotia and we painted our door green and it was the talk of the town for like 3 days, or just all the little tiny moments in life that stood out to me as like these things. And to anyone else, they might be like random stories, but when you tell them, it humanizes you and it connects you and it gives people a little piece of like you might be like to work with, what you might be like as a human. But at the same time, it reminds you every day to look for those small moments because every day you choose what you're going to be grateful for. And like gratitude is not just I have a gratitude journal. Gratitude is a daily practice and it's not easy to stay on top of it. I mean, there's plenty of times where I get totally down the wrong path and my husband will remind me, hey, you have a business, it's called Be Grateful. could you could you maybe revisit that? And it's when I am doing an order for one of the gratitude boxes and I'm reading all these moments and these people's stories that remind me like, yeah, I have so many things in life to be grateful for and I need to share those things. And that's when you share the stories and people really connect. They want to be around you. They want to be with you. And so I've been in my new role about 6 weeks and I've already made a lot of really great connections with a lot of different people. And a lot of it was just opening myself up, putting myself out there, sharing my personal story, sharing who I was. This old idea of like a business person and a home person and the two should never cross. It's like bring your whole self, bring it, but don't bring that fake one that you thought, well, this is what they're going to want with, corporate Megan is going to be this. Because there is no corporate Megan.
The corporate Megan, may she arrive now. And that's where people get hung up on titles, right? So, what's your new title? And you don't even lead with that title. Like,
No.
never say your title. It doesn't matter. What value do you bring to the world? That's what people want to know. It's not really that you're the CEO or you're this or whatever. They want to know what value you could bring. So, because they might have an idea of what a director would do or, different positions. So, but what value you bring, that's what people, oh, that's what she brings. Okay. And then they can see you in so many different ways than your title. Titles are so, yeah, yeah. Oh, Kim's joining us, and Kim says, I'll pop it up. Best meme ever. I hope your life is as wonderful as it is on your Facebook. Yes, so true. All those moments that, who do they matter for sure. So now, what are the kind of boxes that you're curating? I guess some of it would be confidential, but what are the stories, some of the stories that you've been unfolding that just give you the shivers or that really resonate that you're like, this is going to make a difference? What are the small, quirky stories that you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, every box tells a unique story. That's the really cool thing about it. So even though the shell of the box and the paper we printed on are all the same, everyone goes a different path depending on who's getting it and what the occasion was for. And I've done some that were there was a retirement one for a gym teacher, and that one got over 120 submissions, and it was crazy. They had current students, they had students that were like had graduated the school like 20 years ago, they had colleagues and parents and community leaders, all this stuff all wrote in, and it was the impact that this gym teacher had made on their community, on their lives, on where they were headed. And I couldn't believe some of the stories that came out of that one. And then, I had done one that was for a surgeon who, was retired now but had developed dementia. And his son, I remember, wrote in and said, you know, Dad, you were so busy when we were kids, but you always showed up to every baseball game. And I noticed that and I appreciated it. And it made me think, at the time I was reading it and I was thinking to myself, my son was in soccer and I was going to the games, but I was multitasking and checking emails and, doing everything you're trying to do because you're going a million places. And I thought, geez, like I need to stop overscheduling, put him in one thing and really be present. Because I remember this one day where he came running over off the field and he said, "Did you see I scored the goal?" And I was like, "Yes, I did." And I had not. And that card really resonated with me when I read it because I thought I can see myself in that, but in a way that I need to course correct a little bit as a parent. And, I read these stories and I'm just like, there's a lot more to life than what we sometimes see, that running from one thing to the next and chasing this idea of where we should be. There's a lot going on in your life all around you. There's millions of magical moments everywhere, and you just got to open your eyes to look for them. And I think right now, on a really stressful day or a really bad day, I'll pause for a minute and I'll just reflect on like what's happened in the day, because you can always identify a handful of like those micro moments, whether it was like that extra hug you got going out the door, or, my husband's amazing and makes me coffee every morning before I get up. And, I take that for granted some days. But those are the things that you reflect. And I think every time I do these gratitude boxes, it's a reminder to me of those things. And it's a reminder to like look for those stories and tell those stories, because other people it can have the same effect on them that it has on me when I read them, to remember the small things in life and to share them and connect. Because, I once read that storytelling is like looking at life through the honey jar, that depending on what angle you look at it, it's slightly distorted. And that's basically that whoever tells the story is going to tell it a little different. But I think in today's age of social media, it's almost like we are telling stories through like the supremely commercial filtered honey that, that is not distorted. It is all one thing and just mass
Yeah.
produced, right? And so I kind of liken it back to when I read all these cards of like, let's get back to that homemade honey jar, the slightly distorted, the kind of wonky, because people can connect to that more.
Yeah, and this can't be that fake sweetness that doesn't really taste good in the end in anything at all. It's those stories, those micro moments that are through the cracks that people get to. So yeah, that we want to connect with each other in a human to human way all the way through. I think there's so many glimpses too that when you're thinking about your stories and doing, if you're going to do a box with Be Grateful, or if you're going to do your story bank, look for those stories. Write a column one day where you're just writing all the things that you're grateful for. So then you have a story bank of stories for, how your husband makes you coffee and it's the best coffee ever. And then you could also have, and then one day, because there's always going to be, and one day, or thinking about those stories of maybe a lot of us can relate to the not great parenting stories. So there's all these stories that people will relate to, and then they'll add their stories to your stories. And then it just makes this beautiful vignette of human connection. Your ecosystem grows because of it, and your network does too, because we're sharing these authentic glimpses of ourselves. And it makes people, like you said earlier, lean in to
Yep.
yourself and jump off the page when you're writing your letter, cover letter to somebody. And I always recommend still write those old fashioned cover letters, because it's so rare. And then
Yep.
people get to see and know that Megan's so awesome. She's going to make our place even better than what we could even imagine. Yeah, she has the skills, whatever, but it's the passion that you bring when you write a story.
I think one of the best things too is I was so nervous to put forward what I was doing as my passion project when I went through this interview process. And my current employers loved it about me. When I shared it, that was like exactly what they wanted in their culture. And I think you can't be afraid to bring your real self there. To be authentic isn't something that you try to package and create. It's who you are. So just show up. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't filter yourself. Don't filter the honey jar. Just put the honey out. Just be yourself. because if you land in the place you're supposed to be, people will accept it. They'll embrace it. They'll lean into you. And if you're somewhere where you shouldn't be, that's where you shouldn't be. Don't try to fit that place.
No, especially now, where I think the fit is so much more important than it ever has been. So by putting your authentic self out, and then you're going to attract the right people at the right time. So I think those are all really good messages. So tell us a little bit as we end here, a little bit more about Be Grateful, how we can get involved, how we can then send some stories and some love to our family members or colleagues or anyone. Tell us a little bit more about what we can do to get involved with Be Grateful.
Yeah, so it's really easy. You can find me on my site at begratefulink.com. And all you need to do is really decide on what type of gratitude box you want to do. And I work one-on-one with you on creating what that gratitude box might look like. And we create a custom link that is a website that you send out to your family and friends. And that way they can send in their stories without having to send it directly to you. So it comes into me, I curate the box, we get everything printed. I generally will match each of the stories with an inspirational quote if that's something that you want. And then I get everything printed and the box comes to you or your loved one, depending on where you want it to go. We've done them for, celebration of life, milestone birthdays, anniversaries, retirements, graduations, you name it. Some are just because, when people need a little love right now, for sure. If your family's not close by and you want to show that person how much they mean or how much love and support they have around them. It's an incredible process to go through. If you just even think about when you write down how much somebody matters to you, how you feel, and then multiply it by, 50, 52, 60, 70 cards, however many you might get. And that's how that person's going to feel when they read each one of those cards.
Yeah. And so when you do your card, think about, and this goes back to journalism school, think about that tiny moment, that one little thing, and give it some color. That one little thing that really that maybe is just unique to your experience with that one person, and tease that out. Give it some color of what happened and what you felt and where you were and what it smelled like and the other people's names in it. I think that's adding a little bit more to something always makes something better and makes it deeper from the heart. But such a great box, and what a great idea that you've come with, and totally micro moments that matter, and being your authentic self. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And so we talk everything stories and professional branding. Join my LinkedIn page if you haven't already and follow us, and we'll have more professional branding stories for you in the future. Take care. Stay well. Bye.